All right, I'll call us back to order and we'll
Recording in progress.
go on with 8B. 8C. Concept plan for Pulte Hackamore properties.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Brad, you're all familiar with the site in the southeast corner of the city on the north side of Hackamore, west of 101. Next slide. It is a PUD concept plan from Pulte Homes for this property that is guided low-density residential. Our land use plan says this will develop at 3 to 5 units per net acre. The current zoning is RSF2, single family. The gross acreage is 32.38 acres. Based on a wetland delineation that was done previously, it looks like about 29.65 net acres. The proposal is 45 to 47 single-family homes and 82 townhomes. The range there is because on the east side of the site at Goldenrod, there are some lots from Pulte that might get incorporated, and up on the north side, actually, it's up on the north side, I'm sorry, from Lennar, that Pulte would incorporate these half lots into their project. So it kind of depends on how that relationship with Lennar on the north side gets, what the actual number would be. Next slide. The planned unit development is proposed. Planned unit development is a tool that allows a mixing of uses that wouldn't otherwise be allowed under standard zoning, and allows for flexibility in design standards in exchange for a higher level of design, preservation of natural resources, or more creative land use. Their PUD concept shows about 3.9 units per gross acre. And so when we get to the net acreage, we can say that we expect about 89 to 148 units on this site to meet the 3 to 5 unit per net acre. That's the high and the low end of what I'm estimating net acreage is. We don't have a full survey, we don't have the full plat, the delineation with the buffers and all those things yet, but that's my estimate for a concept plan. Net density definition is in the code and on the screen here, so that's why I can't calculate it till we get further into the process. But generally in the range that's allowed. Next slide. The flexibility for the PUD is requested to allow a mix of single-family homes and townhomes, and flexibility from the minimum lot size and lot width requirements of the RSF2 zoning district, and some setback flexibility for the single-family homes. No setback flexibility as laid out is requested for the townhomes. And in exchange, the applicant had a list of 8 or 9 benefits of the PUD. I think the significant ones are the increased setbacks on the perimeter of the site to buffer neighboring homes, tree preservation, particularly on the west property line, some additional conifer landscaping that they're proposing around the perimeter, and wetland preservation. Other components were suggested by the applicant, but I think many of those are things that would be required to be done regardless of whether it was a PUD or not. Next slide. This is another version of the concept plan, and you can see the tree preservation and additional landscaping proposed. A couple things, when we last looked at a concept on this property, Larkspur Lane on the north was proposed to connect up to Lupine Lane there in that location, and Goldenrod on the south connection was not there. Both were planned to go through when we were sort of looking at the Tavera project and planning future connections. They've eliminated that, made Lupine a cul-de-sac on the north, made Larkspur and Goldenrod the main connections. The stub down to County Road, or to Hackamore, is where we've generally planned that. And there are no connections to 101. 101 connections were strongly discouraged by the county when other access routes are available. Next slide. So the site plan, or the staff report, excuse me, laid out the issues and how it complies and where flexibility is asked. If the council is supportive of the concept plan, the next step would be to submit the rezoning from RSF2 to PUD, the preliminary plat and the PUD development plan, and then the final step would be final plat and final PUD development plan. The applicant is here tonight, and as I think has a slideshow if the council is willing to allow him to present that as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Perfect. Wanna right ahead?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Hoyer, Pulte Homes, 7500 Flying Cloud Drive, Suite 670, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344. It's good to be here this evening. I appreciate the chance to get before you. I've got a short presentation I'd like to run you through, present a little bit of new information, and explain how we got to this point here today. This is the agenda. I really want to just focus on our approach, number 3 primarily, but go ahead, Kendra. Go ahead. So you might remember us from a couple things. We're well known for our floor plans. That's something we oftentimes work real hard on. We actually build homes and rooms in warehouses across the country, pay people to go through and give us feedback. So through that iterative exercise, we've really established a strong reputation for floor plans. And you may recall us from a couple of neighborhoods in the Twins in Corcoran. The first is a Del Webb Community, Bellwether, and that was approved in 2018. And also most recently, earlier this year, you approved Amberley and an extension of Bellwether. So we're building under both the Pulte Homes and the Del Webb name brands in town here. Kendra hit this pretty well. Go ahead, Kendra. Yeah, we went through a brief exercise to see what kind of densities we could get on this property, given the lot widths that are shown in your zoning code. And we really struggled on this particular unique site in getting to that 3 to 5 units per acre. One thing that was really unique to us is we haven't seen a property like this before where there are a fair amount of trees, but they're concentrated on the perimeter, primarily the east, the south, and the west side, less so in the central part of it. So when we stopped to take a look at the property, we immediately recognized, go ahead to the next slide here, Kendra, that there are 2 ways for us to look at this. One is your standard zoning, which is, why don't you go back one? No distractions here. So the standard way to go through this is the straight zoning, which would really mean try to maximize the number of lots that would be on the property. Ignore pretty much the topography as much as possible. But we recognized with the trees along the east, the south, and the west boundaries that we had another option here, and that would be the PUD option. And it really comes down to a prioritization of the city council. What is more important to you? One option is the housing type, and the alternative is to try to preserve trees and buffer around the perimeter of the site, make it look more beautiful from the exterior, and perhaps be a little more sensitive to the neighbors too. So those are the 2 options we kind of debated, and we came at you tonight with the PUD option. Go ahead, 2 slides, Kendra. And just a few examples of how we approached this layout compared to what we might have done with a straight zoning. So we've got a number of wetlands that are signified by this kind of lighter green color here. They're primarily along the perimeter of the site. We chose to show no filling of wetlands. We haven't really dug into the details with our wetland consultant to find out, but there might be the potential to fill some of those wetlands if we wish to kind of expand the footprint of our housing, get it closer to the perimeter with a straight zoning application. Go on. Another thing we tried to do is the ponds, which are represented by the blue here. We focused on placing the ponds, again, at the perimeter, instead of pushing them into the setback areas where it would require the removal of trees and things like that. So we're really focused, again, on preserving that perimeter. With straight zoning, that would not be the primary goal. Open space. So as part of preserving this perimeter of trees, especially on the west, the east, and the south sides, we were able to concentrate the open space in those perimeter areas. The result is we have 34% open space, and that doesn't even include the huge setbacks that we left over here on private property on the west boundary. So for all practical purposes, we're probably in the 35 to 40% area, which is pretty substantial. Tree preservation really was the heart of the reason that we came at the approach and the site planning with the PUD. It was all about preserving the trees. This is a map that wasn't in the application that I sent. We have more information available today as they continue to do the tree inventory. So all the green trees are potential preserved trees on site. So those are the inventory trees. And there's a massive amount of trees on the site that are really around those three sides of the project. So let's look at those buffers individually. This is the east side, right along 101. You can see there's a massive amount of trees there. We also really pushed the homes back a long ways. This is the setback line, and instead of putting the pond out here in the setback area and pushed the homes out there, we pulled them way back, 200 and some feet beyond the setback line. And by the way, this includes the dedication of additional right-of-way for 101. So it's not the existing right-of-way line. We're talking a setback from the future right-of-way line. Go ahead. This is just photos taken last Thursday, starting from the south along 101 and going north, left to right. And the purpose of showing you this is, even in the winter, when the deciduous trees have lost all their leaves, there's a tremendous amount of buffer there that remains. And here's the Hackamore buffer. Some of these trees along here don't look the greatest. But you know, I have mixed feelings about whether or not we should save all those trees, but we're open to preserving all of those. Once again, we have the setbacks back from the townhomes. Single-family home set way back here. We're able to preserve a number of trees all along here. In some of the gaps where we might desire more buffer than is there now, we'd be happy to plant some additional coniferous trees. And once again, starting here on the west side, driving Hackamore going east, you can see that there's a number of coniferous trees that really provide a pretty strong buffer, even in the winter. And finally, the west property line. This is the first thing that caught my eye, is how many trees are along that buffer. First of all, you'll notice that there's some purple trees here. Those represent trees that are off the subject property. So those stay no matter what. The green trees represent existing trees that we inventoried in the exact locations that they exist and that we believe we can save because we pushed the homes quite a ways into the east. So again, setbacks are typically 10 or 30 feet, depending on if it's the rear yard or the side yard for any homes that would be on these lots. However, we push these homes back 47 to 100 plus feet. And the photos, forgive the slightly blurry one here, but once again, it's not solid north to south through all the properties, but nevertheless, there is a solid buffer of trees through most of that shared property line. So that's really what we focused on. So it really comes down to, again, that big question, you know, what is your greatest priority? You know, the option of straight zoning is we would maximize the property and make it as efficient as we can, and that means probably filling some of the wetlands, definitely removing a fair amount of the trees, and having larger lots with single-family homes, meeting the low-density requirements, still not making the density requirements from the comp plan. So I'm not sure how you deal with that, but let's ignore that for the moment. And then we went the direction of complying with the density requirements in your comp plan, not complying with your zoning requirements, which doesn't allow the townhomes here, but really focusing hard on creating a neighborhood that had huge buffers that are preserved not just for the neighbors, but also in the entrance to the city of Corcoran. That leaves a much more buffered, attractive neighborhood than something that would really maximize the efficiency of the land and use rate zone. So that's it for my presentation. Again, there's two ways to approach some sites. This one was particularly well laid out with the buffers along the east, west, and south. to really have a shot at a PUD because there's something to save here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Any questions for Paul? Start off. No, there's got to be some. I'll start off with, I think the point that you raise about straight zoning versus PUD. The thing that jumps out to me is that there seems to be that's a big jump from the 80-foot no townhomes, excuse me, that our zoning RSF2 requires and the 50 feet with townhomes. I just feel like there's a lot of middle ground. That's a big jump to me. Given, I mean, our other RSF2 zoned areas would be primarily Ravinia, or what I guess the PUD was based on.
Correct. Ravinia and Tavera and Bellwether. I think all of our projects have started as RSF2 and then come in under PUDs.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what stands out to me to start. The things I like, the keeping of the treescape and the landscaping are on both sides of the project. I think it's the housing type that concerns me a little bit, the townhomes and the 50-foot lots in and of themselves. Just at that side, that's a significant jump from the 80 feet that the code is.
What's the smallest lot size we have in the neighboring community of Ravinia? I think we have some pretty small lots,
We have
don't we?
there are 50-foot lots in Ravinia.
Both
We have-
the piece that abuts this, isn't it, and then the one on the north side?
Yeah, I think the one directly to the north, I don't think they got down to 50-foot lots, but I think the fourth, which is just north of this, had some 50-foot lots.
Yeah.
Just north of the old Nichols property there.
As far as townhomes, so we get a lot of townhomes in Tavera. How does that compare to what's being proposed as far as setbacks and?
Well, the Tavera does have townhomes on the corner of Hackamore and 116. You'll actually see that next month, the final plat for that. Those are at this, closer to that 60-foot setback from 101 in Tavera, for example.
From 101?
116.
I'm sorry, from 116 compared to the 200 some that we've got from 101 with this concept. Along Hackamore, probably similar setbacks.
You said it's 200 in this proposal? I think the chart I'm looking at shows, I'm looking at the wrong thing. It says 100-foot setback from major roadways.
The code requires that. Their concept plan here shows 220 feet from,
Oh, I was looking at the chart in the
Oh.
staff report.
yeah, that's just the minimum requirement. They've got a one up on the north, that single-family home, that's about 50 feet.
Would we be able to meet suppose we decided that we would keep everything up to code? Would we be able to meet the Met Council's 3 per if we just took these roads and just put in according to our code?
Well, remember we had this discussion with the
Yes,
Urban Conservation
do.
District, and I think it would be very difficult on this site. I have shown you that you can do it on a 40-acre site. You can make it at 3 units per acre. But every site's different. This site has some unique challenges with the way the wetlands lay out. It's possible that you couldn't on this one. I just don't know. It's always going to be very close to, very difficult to get to 3 units per acre in RSF2, but we know, because we've done it, that it's possible on the right site.
With a farm field that's never had anything and it's like
I put some wetlands on that for you.
yeah, I understand. I'm just asking because some of the things that work to its detriment when it comes to big lots. It's an exchange of, that is a unique site if you go on it. And it's kind of, an example is if you go 2 miles west, or maybe just a mile, they basically leveled every tree on the property knowing that they're gonna do a regular old development, and ultimately, they're gonna level the land too, to meet that. So it's not a case of you either have one or the other, but they make it you kind of present it as you can either have this or that, but I don't know if it's that simple, but it is a case where the property, I think, deserves to have a unique outcome because the property is so unique in the first place.
Yeah, I think most people prefer not to have townhomes per se, but I think you do a pretty good job of hiding them within the development in that regard, buffering from existing properties.
It's like $500,000 townhouses too.
Yeah, nothing's cheap anymore.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
what changes will happen to Hackamore? Are we able to get any improvements done to Hackamore with this development and such? I know we'll have a right turn lane, those kind of things, but my concern has always been Hackamore is just a gravel road with somebody laid some tar down and it's beat up and dead. What is the status of Hackamore?
Well, I can answer briefly, and then Kevin, maybe you want to weigh in. I mean, as part of this project, we'd do a feasibility study. Certainly, they'd be responsible for some improvements on Hackamore, or if the Hackamore project goes forward, they'd participate in that project. But maybe, Kevin, you could add more to that.
Yeah, sure. I think this aligns with that project in terms of where the access is. And this development would be reviewed as part of the requirements and agreements we have with Medina. So we're still
Okay.
working through some of that. We have I think it's a 75% design, so we kind of have a vision. We're trying to establish the vision for the corridor, and we're working
Okay.
through some things. So this development the feasibility study would analyze the site and pair it up with the requirements and the goals of that kind of agreement we're working towards with Medina. So it would be flushed out through this process.
It would help end result, so to speak, of Hackamore improvements, we're hoping. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you add a development to a road, there's an impact, and they have to address that as part of the development.
Yeah, the property developing in general.
Yep.
So I guess in terms of feedback, where are we all? My feedback is that I would like to see us get bigger on the lot sizes and go away from at least this number of townhomes. I'm not sure I'm supportive of the townhomes in general, but I think at least at this distribution, it's a little much for me, but that's just my take on it.
I like the buffers
Yeah.
that you've added. I like the trees. I like that philosophy that you're trying to work within the envelope of the property that you have. I admire that model, and I'd like to see it emulated more. I like the looks of the homes that you've selected in terms of the images that you put into your plan. I also like the idea of an internal park, because we know that the existing park in the area is relatively undersized and is often overcrowded for larger events. So I think if there's a way to work some park into this in light of the larger number of residents in this part of the city, I think that would be helpful. I also like your street layout and the connections that you've chosen to make and where they're connecting. I did get some feedback from residents on the northern side that would prefer if there's a way to do the construction on the cul-de-sac on the northeastern corner, if that could connect internally to your development so that the construction doesn't have to go through their spur instead. I'm not sure if that's feasible, but it would be desirable if we could avoid construction for those folks. And then there's also been feedback from people on the north side of the pond. There are some trees that are being proposed to be removed. I might show up on this one as those red dots along the top. They were curious why those are being removed when so many of the others are staying. I don't know if you can speak to that, Paul.
I can't. I asked my engineer to take a guess in terms of how he believes, based on the existing grades, what he's able to save. And what goes through his mind are things like, all right, you've got a pond at this elevation, the homes have to be at least 3 feet higher. He goes through all these things. We have to meet the engineering requirements of the minimum grade of street versus the maximum. So he spins all that around and something comes out, and this came out. So I really can't answer that. What I can say is, not to defend our competitors, but in some of the large properties where they do level the land, as Councilmember said, it's harder to preserve trees in the center part. It's easier on the boundary where you have less flexibility. So I have hopes that some of those red trees can be saved, but I don't know exactly what went into the thinking behind my engineer.
Okay, very good. I assume, this is probably a better question. Is it possible as you're doing construction to have the access come in from Hackamore primarily, rather than through the existing residential streets
Construction access, yes.
primarily? I know you can't for that cul-de-sac up to the northern edge, but,
We could phase it so that construction traffic does come in through here. Yes, and it's pretty common that we do that to be sensitive to the neighbors.
okay, very good. Have you, so the density target requires a minimum, according to Kendra, of 89. The proposal is 127. There has been a lot of concern from residents about the townhome mix and having larger numbers of living units. Have you considered alternatives to that, like twin homes or additional single-family to change the mix? I know when you did the proposal for Amberley and Bellwether earlier this year, it was sort of a mix of 65 and 50-foot lots. Have you considered a different mix of units to get closer to the lower end of the density target?
The mix that we did consider here, and I'll throw it out there for your consideration, is to remove 18 townhomes and line the side of the street here with single-family homes. So as I recall, it would be reducing by 18 townhomes, and I forgot the number, 10 or 11 single-family lots would replace it. Would that be something that would be more comfortable to you?
I think that's better. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that, but I don't know if that's enough.
I think it's trending in the right direction. I think there's a lot of details that have to be figured out. Would that be another 50-foot lots you're talking about? Placing them with? Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And keep in mind, the 50-foot lot is narrow because it's a two-car garage, which there is a demand for, although it's not being served well.
Gotcha.
I'm a country boy. Any way you can preserve the barn?
I keep hearing about that barn.
I get a head shake back behind you. You don't need to say any more.
Barn should be moved
Just asking.
if they can.
It's so,
Storm down.
it's
If
so tall, it's easier to move single-level homes down a street than it
it
is
is,
a tall barn.
again, it's just the farm person in me and stuff. I know what it is, and it would be nice if that could get preserved, but that's not a deal
We'd be
breaker.
happy to give it away.
We moved a two-story house down Hackamore into my neighborhood a couple of years ago.
It can be done.
Build a new one.
Yeah,
Tear it down, build a silo and a new one.
this is a mortise and tenon kind of deal, and it takes a little while to tear that apart, but I digress, sorry.
Mr. Mayor?
Hold on, Alan had a couple.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, you-
Oh, I was just gonna say, you talked about removing 18 townhomes along Larkspur and replacing them with single-family.
Yes.
Instead of an option there, is it an option to remove the townhomes that abut Hackamore and replace them with single families, so the townhomes are totally encapsulated within the community?
You know, we're kind of,
You know, so when you drive down Hackamore, you don't see townhomes at all, it's just homes.
yep, I totally understand.
And the only reason I'm getting at that, and the thing I regret the most about Tavera is, Tavera, the townhomes are sitting on the entrance to our town,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing you
Yeah.
drive in is you're gonna see townhomes. 101 in Hackamore is like a gateway to our town too, even though we share it with Maple Grove and Medina and Plymouth. If you could put single-family homes where those two townhome buildings are down there, and it basically looks like single-family homes instead of those townhomes, then I think the perception of having higher density units inside that area goes away, because people aren't gonna notice them from the street, right? They're gonna just see single-family homes.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer, because what you're saying has perfect logic, but typically, the single-family homeowners are less tolerant for living along the busy intersections, the busy roads. We see homes everywhere, I admit. Right up against train tracks, you'll see an $800,000 house, but there are kind of rules of thumb that in general, you know, there are trends, and one of the trends is, you don't do that. You don't have single-family homes kind of surrounding a townhome area. Try to avoid, when you can, having single-family homes in kind of a more intensive area.
I understand what you're saying. I don't think Lennar had an issue selling those single-family homes along 101 up there, so. It's just a thought, because we've gotten inundated with emails in the last week, as I'm sure you're aware, and it has to do with this perception of high density, right?
Yeah.
Even though the density is 3 to 5, it fits our low density, it's the perception, it's townhomes, it's high density. So what I'm saying is, if you're doing a trade-off between townhomes and single-family homes, I'd suggest you make that trade-off down there, so you eliminate that perception. Because if you're not driving through that neighborhood, you'd probably never know then there's townhomes in that neighborhood.
I will make an effort to win that argument.
Can I ask a question? I'm here on the phone, sorry.
There are a number of people with hands raised on Zoom. I don't know if we want to
Yes,
entertain that or not.
In the past, we've generally not, if they've not spoken at public comment,
Yeah.
to generally not recognize
Yep.
folks.
I think we'll continue with that. Sorry about that. Where were we? We were,
I was done. I don't know if you want to try to win that argument tonight or another
Not
night.
with you. Let me absorb that.
Yeah.
And have discussions internally. That goes against what we've done in the past and what many have done. But I hear what you're saying, and you're right.
It makes it easier to get a PUD done if you address the multiple, if you address some of the concerns we get as a council, even if it's a challenging thing to do.
Okay,
I think you know how that works.
yes.
One to one side or the other. I mean, it's great that you're open to talk about it, so thank you very much.
We will dig into those issues.
For what it's worth, as a comparable development, so on the southeastern corner of the same intersection, Hanson has had a project that's all single-family along both of those busy roads, and they've cleared it in, I think, 2 years. So
I've
it's
seen that, yes.
It can work, and I think with your buffering, you've got a pretty good shot at it.
I'd say another one that comes to mind too is, I think, the one that you guys purchased on just down Hackamore. 116 and Hackamore, kind of a L-shape, like mirror image of where this
Medina.
property is. Yes. Yep.
Yes.
If you keep that barn, it can be a buffer there too.
There you go.
I like that.
Perfect. Anything else?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, no worries.
So one note that we did get from a neighbor, who actually identified specific lot widths. My understanding is that the adjacent on the west is all 65-foot lots. Yeah. So a buffer on that side, I think, is welcome. Wider lots on that side might also be an improvement, just to get a better transition between the different areas of homes and try to get a similar style.
Yes, that's a great point. We did consider that. So there'd be a transition of wider lots down to narrower lots. But then we focused on the trees, once we got the tree inventory, and we realized they cover such a wide swath of an area that it made more sense to simply not have any lots in that early stage. Instead of having a wide lot, we had no lots, and then we went right down to the narrower lots. And that seemed to work best in terms of preservation of that tree buffer.
Jeremy, are you suggesting maybe only remove like one lot along the cul-de-sac?
And then spread the lots a little bit wider to account.
Just on the Lupine Lane cul-de-sac? I think that's what he's referring to, because there's, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 5 lots in there before you start making the heavy turn in the cul-de-sac.
And then on Goldenrod, it's a similar situation.
And
whereas you'd-
maybe those lots are wider than 50 feet. It's hard to tell, because we don't have a lot layout here.
Yeah, we'd have to go back to an earlier slide to show that detail there. Kendra? I've been calling Kendra, and it's been
Yes,
Brad the
it's
whole
been
time.
Brad.
Yeah.
I'm
You've
sorry.
been chuckling.
I've been called worse.
No, go forward. After the second set of photos.
Goldenrod, it's like 1-to-1, so 1, 1.
Oh, I think these are fine, even this.
Yeah.
And this is wide.
This one.
I think what he's saying.
Yeah.
So this shows, a little confusing, this is the north part, this is the south part, they just connect. So this shows the trees that exist along here. You can see how many of them are not near the property line. They were planted quite a ways in, which created the need for us to have a wider buffer there. So what we ended up with is these homes being anywhere from, I think the labels are shown here, but they're shown on the rendering, anywhere from 47 feet from the property line to over 100. Maybe we get the rendering back up, I'm sorry.
I think the concern from the residents, though, is more about the home style and the lot width than the spacing. Because you've got, on that northern side, you've got the rear setback, which is perfectly fine. On the south side, it's side setback, and you do have a good buffer, I think, to the existing homes.
Yeah, so to be clear, these 3 lots here are wider than all of these lots here
Mhm.
for the purpose of that, preserving that buffer.
Mhm.
We also pushed this cul-de-sac a little bit further to the east to grab a lot more room there to, again, ensure that we can preserve those trees. We haven't done the engineering yet, but my engineer has looked pretty closely at that. He's pretty confident he can save all the trees that were shown in green on that other map. And that was really our primary goal.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Kendra, when you were talking of taking out 18 living units and putting 12 single-family along that road?
10 or 11, yes.
10 or 11, and then if we take another one on the cul-de-sac, what does that take us down to as far as density on this property?
Well, it's
We
127.
take
so-
7 away.
Yeah, so you're at 117, 120.
Yeah, to meet the target, we have to be at 89 total.
Okay,
Well,
So-
we're not gonna solve
no,
all these here, but, there's options. I see Jeremy's point about taking a lot and making it bigger. You could always, well, I say this with my non-engineering education, but, I mean, in theory, you could, looking at the space, maybe you could move the stormwater pond off Goldenrod in between that townhome development, and then add lots there, whatever lot you lose up in that area. I'm sure you guys got lots of magic tricks in your
We do, and a lot of this was governed by the existing trees. Even though we're showing ponds there, we strategically place them in locations between the trees. So everything's very tight, but intentional, so that we could preserve those buffers.
Yeah, I think what Jeremy's kind of getting at is the same thing what I was getting at, is just the perception from neighboring the neighbors around there. If you lose a lot there but add it somewhere else and you widen the lot, there's probably not this perception of density. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know that it's hard for me to convey what it's going to look like when it's done, because we haven't done the engineering, but we also haven't done the landscape plan. What I'm foreseeing is that there are areas where there aren't as many existing trees along here, for instance, or along here, where we need to strategically place rows of conifer trees so we can kind of fill those gaps and make it feel like a real buffer. We know we have a really strong buffer all along here through most of this area and through bits and pieces of this area as well. So I feel pretty confident we can fill some of those spots in and do a lot of damage in terms of buffering. Your idea, which is very interesting down here, and that's still churning through my mind, and we will look deeper into that, and we will also look deeper into what can we do here to make this feel best that we can.
Hello, my name is Kathy, and I don't know if this is the right point to offer comments.
No, it's not.
Thank you for your comments. I just note that we did have a public comment period for this project earlier. Earlier.
And I had sent in an email, and so I was not clear about the rules and the regulations. I just would like to be
Kathy,
on the record of saying,
Kathy,
I want to preserve also trees to the north.
Yep.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Dean?
I just had one comment, and I don't have the sizes here, but I mean, so this here, avenue. it comes
Dean's the
down
chair of the planning commission, so just,
Yeah, so we're not taking public comment.
yeah.
In this cul-de-sac here. Will there be any issues with putting in smaller lots versus, trying to match them up maybe with what closer to Lavinia? It's just a comment I have.
It's a great question. Mayor, can I
Yeah,
respond?
please do.
So, all the homes on the west side are 3-car garages. These homes up in this area are 2-car garages. So they are narrower homes and narrower lots than the other areas. So these are more fitting to the neighboring lots perhaps than these to these, which is why we have the wide buffer here.
Paul, is there space on that eastern side? I know you've got a nice plan for a trail on the southern end. Is there a route for a trail to go on the 101 side of this new proposal as well?
I've wondered the same thing. I do not know if the county has planned a trail. I think I heard one of you say it long ago.
Yes, the county has planned a on-road trail within the right-of-way. So in Ravinia, we took the right-of-way plus a 10-foot easement for the trail. The county said either, I forget how it goes, a 60-foot easement and a 10-foot trail, or a 65-foot half right-of-way, something they gave the option of right-of-way or right-of-way and trail easement, and that's what we would do here as well.
And I saw that my engineer assumed that we're dedicating additional right-of-way along there. And maybe that's the reason, maybe
Okay.
for a future trail.
So is that a trail similar to like what we see south of Hackamore through Medina, Plymouth?
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
It'd be more of a linear trail following the road.
Yeah, they'd be separated off the road.
Right.
So we'll lose some of this buffering that we're talking about at some point if a trail ever does connect through.
A little bit within the right-of-way.
Similar to other conversations we've had tonight, it's all dependent upon everything above it.
Yep.
And out of our control.
So Mr. Mayor, you've got the single-family homes along 63rd Avenue on the north side. I think I think I'd prefer, or want you to think about, like, not having homes that look odd compared to the other ones in the neighborhood. And I'm sure you consider that, but sometimes you drive through a neighborhood and I know obviously you're different builders. Sometimes you drive through a neighborhood and you can tell that. And I would hope that you'd be able to have it not be obvious that one's Lennar and the other one is Pulte. We've seen some emails about that too, so it just doesn't look like incongruency between choices, especially on that road.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there's only so much we can do about that, but there are things we can do with some of the options chosen for the architecture, colors, things like that. As I mentioned, they're all two-car garages, both proposed and existing up there, so there are some similarities. Certainly, there are different builders, but there'll be some differences and some similarities.
Gotcha. Okay.
When Parks looks at this, it'll be interesting, any input they might have about that tot lot and how big a space should be allocated for that. We're kind of in the hard position. Most of the parks that we've put into neighborhoods have been relatively small compared to the guidance in the comp plan. I don't know if they're going to want to do anything different here in light of that. But I'll look forward to seeing whatever feedback they might have.
Definitely. Anything else?
Is this enough for you to go on?
I think so. We need to think about a lot of things. And that's okay. I really thank you for the feedback. It's been detailed, and that's what we're always looking for, so we can understand where to go.
Very good.
Appreciate your time.
Again, lots of positives here, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty. 8D, another concept plan. Last one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a concept plan that will look familiar for Nate Karanimi. Next slide. This is the parcel up on 10 and 19 that wraps around the Public Works facility. Next slide. This is concept number 3 on this site. You've seen a couple different versions of this overlaid on the aerial. It's a little tricky to see, but in the in the northeast corner, they've modified down to 9 lots with a road running along the common lot line. So they eliminated a lot up there. They're showing 3 commercial lots next to Public Works with a new public street that is on the Public Works property. So that right-of-way is on our property as shown here. And then a common open space in the middle of about 50 acres and the same 6 lots down on the south that you saw last time. There is shoreland for Rush Creek, which runs north-south through the site, and a high-quality maple basswood forest in the southwest corner. Next slide. The re-guiding and rezoning is required for the 3 commercial lots. You've seen this a couple times before and generally have been supportive of that. If something's changed, please weigh in. Where this concept is different is now it's that 50-acre outlot in the middle. The applicant is proposing to deed it to the city for parkland. That would accommodate the trail that is planned along the creek. This is another area where we had an off-road trail plan to run along the creek. If we got that trail or that parkland, that would give us an opportunity for that trail. However, one thing I would note is the change to the plans now separates Outlot A from County Road 10. So there's no way for the residents to get to that park without going out to 19. So I do think if this was something you supported, we'd want to have an access from the park up to County Road 10, where you could get off that County Road trail and get down along the creek trail. Both residential lot groupings would be served by a rural street section. That's a paved street with ditches rather than curb and gutter. And that allows them 150% bonus with the open space preservation plat. Last time you saw this, you directed the applicant to work to preserve significant natural resources down in the southern portion of the site. It's not clear how this concept accomplishes that, but it does look like the right-of-way serving those 6 lots is larger, 100 feet where 60 feet is required. I'm not sure if that's intended to preserve trees on the south line or why that's larger, perhaps something the applicant could speak to this evening. Next slide. As I said, there's two new public streets, one off 10 and one off 19 to serve the two residential lot neighborhoods, and a new street to serve the three commercial lots. That would be shared with Public Works, which is something that we have planned if this property developed. It would, however, be located on city property, and which is a change, and the applicant is asking that the city share the cost of the new street. And as noted in the staff report, staff does not support the cost-sharing. Developers typically are required to pay for the cost of any improvements. We have an existing driveway access, so we don't need that new street. And the county would be responsible for approving any new accesses to 19 or 10. Next slide. So again, you can see in the south the trees around those 6 lots, particularly on the south and the east side. The commercial lots by Public Works. And then again, the Lot 9, which is the northernmost lot on 10, I just want to point out, the new public street is on the east, and this lot extends across the creek all the way to the D&D commercial site. And that's where I think there needs to be a gap in that lot, or a trail easement at a minimum provided to make sure we can get off 10 into that public park.
Is there an explanation for that? It seems
No.
like, almost like just an
Almost like a typo,
oversight.
doesn't it?
I don't know what happened. I'm not sure why. And I know the applicant was on. It looks like he dropped off, so I don't think he'll be able to answer for us tonight.
Oh, he might be calling in.
So I'm not sure what happened there either, so something to think about. But,
Hello.
So, anyway, next
They hear
slide. Brad, if you go to the next slide. If the council provides feedback and the applicant decides to proceed, the next step would be an application for a re-guiding and rezoning for the commercial portion, and then a preliminary plat application. OS&P is just a standard subdivision. And then a final plat application to create the lots. If he was able to sell the commercial lots, then each of those would come in for their own site plan and/or conditional use. So a couple things to think about are the idea that the public open space would be deeded. The applicant is also requesting that the city participate in constructing the new commercial street and that it be on the city public works property. So those are a couple things in particular, as well as the idea of the significant natural resource area down on the southern portion of the site. Happy to answer any questions, and it sounded like the applicant is now on if you choose to call on him.
Sounds good. Any questions for Kendra or the applicant?
Yeah, can we ask him about the
Yeah,
Lot 9?
be great. Nate?
Can I make a quick comment? It's the ultimate irony of technology. I was online for 3 hours and 8 minutes, and I promptly disconnected. So I called in on my daughter's phone. I missed
Glad to have you back.
Kendra's presentation. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm happy to answer questions, but I, as Kendra said, this is third and, hopefully final concept. We think we have a really great project if we go ahead with a standard plat, but on the other hand, I think this site could work really well for OS&P, and I think one of the key things that's being offered here is the, I'd like to deed over the 50 acres. I think that has real value. I mean, it's an asset, and if it makes sense financially, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, Nate, can you hear me?
Sure, hear you well, yep.
Oh, okay. Thanks for being on tonight. We're wondering about that Lot 9. It seems like almost a misprint where it disconnects the Outlot A from County Road 10.
Yeah, let me comment on that. We went back and forth on, because we're also looking at doing a standard plat. And I was considering just keeping that, that road access, that road frontage, in the event we go with a standard plat, and just holding on to that farmhouse. Under the OS&P plan, yeah, I think that would be a good, I think it would make sense to keep that as part of the outlot, so the outlot would have access onto County Road 10 as well. So we could trim it back to where it's just bordered on the west side. The farmhouse is bordered on the west side by Rush Creek.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So there's some space to actually get on to the Outlot A from Bass Lake Road, County Road 10.
Oh, yeah, a lot of space. Yeah, you
Okay.
have
Okay,
several hundred feet of road frontage there, yep.
okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
The only things that jump out to me are is it the 2 lots or 3 lots that are in the natural resource area? And then the cost of that road, which I feel like we had a discussion on the first version of this, and we were concerned about that, about the city.
Yeah.
paying for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. We thought we addressed, and sometimes these conversations take place and, it's months later, here we are. We thought we addressed that sufficiently by widening that road. So do you see the road along the southern border? By doing that, we can preserve that whole tree line. I know one of the council members had mentioned that there would be concern, that southerly property is affected by, are they going to be looking at a preserved tree line, or are they going to be looking at a development? And so that's why we widened that road. And we thought it would be possible to do some selective, whether we would do it through Hennepin County resources and, kind of come up with a plan. Frankly, a lot of that forest is deadwood, but a lot of it's really nice trees that we'd like to see preserved. And we think should it come down to it, we think we have done some things by widening that road, and then we could also selectively preserve that high-quality forest.
Were you talking about that street, or were you talking?
I wasn't actually. I don't
Public
think.
Works Street.
I was talking about the other, the Public Works Street. That's the one being proposed is split, sharing the cost. Okay.
Yeah. Secondly, to your second point, on the cost sharing, there's a couple ways of looking at it. And maybe I'm missing something here, but that street is built to a standard that carries city vehicles, and I don't know if it's a 10-ton street or a 12-ton. Somebody, maybe staff would know. I just know, maybe this isn't the right way to look at it. If that was private property, there's no way a private property owner would look at ripping out that street and building a new street 50 feet away. Now, if you have unlimited budget, which I don't think that exists anywhere, then that would be perfectly rational. My thoughts were that if the city would entertain some kind of cost sharing, or using the existing street and access, that might benefit a lot of parties. The county would like to see that access point remain right where it is. I've confirmed that in a couple of concept meetings with the county. B, it would take advantage of existing infrastructure that's there, paid for. And C, the city, would benefit. They'd have a road going to 50 acres of new city property.
Is it actually a city street, or is it a city driveway?
It's a driveway.
It's a driveway.
Okay.
But the access point, the access point is still there, right?
Well, I understand that. I have a hard time telling a taxpayer in the city that we're gonna cost share and develop a new street for a private landowner to develop 3 commercial lots, when we already have access that works for the city into our facility. If the only benefit to the city is having access to Outlot A, we could establish that somewhere else, probably.
Well, no, but I'm not, here, let me back up. Development property is a real asset. That's pretty obvious, right? I put the value of that 50 acres at probably $1,250,000. So, I mean, and we could, if there's any interest in investigating this concept, certainly we could establish that with appraisers and other, market experts. So if I'm deeding over $1 million asset, and I know the city is a nonprofit, but I would think there's commercial value.
I thought
And
originally
value
the
to
city,
the
the city
city
didn't
as well.
want this as parkland. In the first concept, did I miss something?
No, we did.
I think it was long-term, there was something previously about it.
Well, previously.
We
it was
didn't wanna
gonna
do
be a
athletic
sports
fields on it.
complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that went away. But when the first concept came in, I thought we had comment that,
Well, I think the first concept got a little sideways because we believed the application was suggesting dedication of the park to the city, and there was some interest, and then Nate said we misunderstood. He wasn't proposing dedication of that entire acreage. So that's what happened the first time. And so I think we then stopped the discussion before we completed it.
okay. I wasn't here for the meeting with the second time this came through, so.
Couldn't he put the cul-de-sac a little bit closer to the road and then he just pays for that piece and we figure out how to get, we don't have to have that cul-de-sac go. I agree with the concept of not wanting to have two outlets to 19 there. And so if Nate wanted to cul-de-sac right after the road leaves the city property, couldn't he do that and we'd worry about how to get out to the park? If we wanted a clear delineation of who pays for what?
Would some of that road, that wouldn't work as a road, would it? As is, it would have to be,
I don't believe it would, that was before my time, but I think it was intended to be a driveway. More substantial driveway, but still probably not a full road section.
It's also part of the looping transportation loop to get vehicle traffic in and out of there. So removing that portion of the loop would change the way the facility functions as well.
The loop would stay. It'd just be used by other entities.
It'd be a public road.
Yeah, they just loop on a public road.
Which, if there's a park accessing off of it, something to think about operation.
yeah, that's true.
You mean, are you saying that'd be bad operation?
Well, I mean, if you develop that 50 acres at the end of the cul-de-sac and we're operating out in the road and people are entering at a certain time, it could, just something to think about. This is premature concept level, but, creating a operational space on our facility would be preferred to operating out in a public space.
Yeah, I think if you had a park, you'd probably want to have the access on the north side and avoid public works altogether. This might not be a good idea, but I'll propose it in case it is. If there's value in the driveway that's there, would the city consider selling that portion of the property to Nate and he includes it in his road construction? Leveraging whatever is leverageable? It's okay if that's a bad idea, you can tell me, but.
When we lose our access to,
Yeah, 'cause if he owned that and was developing it, he could design the road to meet road standards. And then-
He would never own the road.
Well, right, but he would own the land the road is on.
Well, not anymore. It'd be a public road.
Once his project is approved, yeah, you
Yeah.
take it as a road.
You're saying we could just use a public road to get into our city public works.
That would be the idea, yeah. And like I said, there's probably, there could very well be an issue with that, but just want to put it on the
It's a
table.
very similar issue to the other one is, if the closer the road is to the north end of our building, the more we rely on that space operationally to make turns and move around the facility. So if you make that a public road, sell it, make it a public road, you're cutting into our operational space and pushing us out into a public roadway, which is not preferred and why we're not recommending it. if the road was, we would want the road to be touching our north property line, because the county will only allow one connection out there. That was the plan that I believe they're referring to. So we would have to close our driveway, and then we'd have driveways off of the new public road just north of our property line, but we would still be able to maintain our space for site expansion, for operations. You know, we're gonna have more vehicles out there in the future than we have today, and we need to be able to use that space to shift equipment around on our own site.
So you're saying we never can do anything with that driveway other than have it be a driveway? We can have one entry point, but it has to be not our driveway.
We probably have two entry points to the future road to the north whenever something happens.
Yeah.
The area develops, yes. But
That makes sense.
I wouldn't, I would fight hard to give up any operational space that we exist today. It would have to,
Yeah, that makes
have
sense.
to be a longer
Yeah.
conversation than today, but operationally, that's an important spot for us.
Okay.
So you would take out the driveway that connects the main road to that first northern pointing access point to the
Yeah.
parking lot?
Yeah, so the first 150 feet would go away. We'd have two new connections to the new road. We would require that touching our road, so we would have access, because that would be required to be given up by Hennepin County.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And is Hennepin County okay with the access road to the south coming into that tree line? Has that been,
Yes, that road meets the spacing guideline from the intersection.
okay,
They only want so many roads. I forget exactly what the spacing guideline is, but, yeah, that was able to confirm that they would, that does meet the spacing guideline. The other thing they confirmed, and I just throw this in there because it's relevant, they do not support a road going in north of the county or the city property there because of the awkward staggered four-way intersection that sets up. Directly east is a wetland area that you could not build a seamless four-way across. The access point, the county would recommend the access point not be shifted north.
We'd have to ghost plat all the properties around it to make that the case. There's not always a four-way intersection, so, I mean, something we'd have to look at, but.
No, County Road 101's a perfect example of that, when you have kind of a laddered approach in northeastern Corcoran. So I understand the county's desire to do those things, but I don't think moving a road 80 feet north, right now you couldn't have a four-way right across from it where it is, so I think it's not changing the condition at all.
Agree.
So I think overall, I think the road thing is obviously a huge issue and the cost sharing thing that we have concerns with. But other than that, overall scope of the project, I do like. But I feel like that road's going to be a pretty big sticking point.
Yeah, I like it too.
I realize this is, I might regret bringing up another concept option, but if the road came from another, let me just say it came from an, you know, does the city have any cost sharing appetite at all, or is that just, maybe it simplifies this whole conversation. It's a lot of property. You could say that's a large financial sacrifice for me. Does the city even have any appetite for cost sharing?
I'd say that's probably a bigger conversation than just right now, but that would be, I can't think of when we've done that.
Yeah, well, in Mayor and Council, we don't have funds just sitting around.
Right.
So there is no mechanism to just pull out money to cost share on something. You know, in front of us, you know, the city's plan is for a nice trail to come through this, which would need nowhere near 50 acres. I get the, you know, the kind of share here, I give you this, but in turn help us with, you know, a couple $100,000 a road, but we just don't have those capacities to do this. So I don't know what the funding source would be.
The concept, I think Nate would be referring to is, if just put a different way, instead of cost sharing, you would include 30 acres in parkland, and then we would buy 20 acres of parkland for the exact cost of the road, that would be just to the north of our driveway, and that would help Nate offset a cost. So take cost share out. Basically, the proposal is you want to buy 20 acres of parkland for the cost of the driveway to Nate's other pieces of property. I think it's worth knowing that the city wanted to buy this property 10 years ago, and they couldn't fund it. They didn't have the money, and that money went to buying the acres of park over there. And so like, at one point, this was considered a piece of desirable property. I think that most of what we would get from the city is lowlands, not necessarily the highlands, so it's less valuable than what it was priced at before. But if there's no interest in buying 20 acres or whatever the price is for the cost of that road, that's the answer.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed with when the city decided to walk away from their agreement.
Yeah.
And let it expire, and we purchased land elsewhere. And to that point, I also heard from time to time, why would we put a big facility in that part of town when it wasn't centrally located? That was one of the arguments I heard against that, but.
Yeah, it's all true.
I don't think standalone we'd have a desire to do that. We probably wouldn't have a desire to buy this land.
No,
I'd be hard pressed to go into any type of sharing arrangements or road removal when we just looked at a concept plan earlier today, and the developer's gonna eat the whole cost of that road.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, Nate, if that helps you, at least in the overall scope of the things we do like, the road, I think, is gonna be the tough part.
Sure, yeah, and that's why in part, and I haven't done engineering calculations on that road. I'm sure it's maybe it is a private driveway. It looks pretty formidable, and I thought I would bring that up I just thought it kind of could be a creative way of financing a development and giving the city a large asset, valuable asset. But I think this does clarify, and I look forward to, as was previously mentioned, building a really nice trail all the way along Rush Creek, and I think that'll be very nice for the city, and it'll allow me to pursue a development where the numbers make sense.
Sounds good. Well, appreciate your time.
I did have one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Actually, one more question.
I don't know if this is practical or not, Nate, and again, don't take it as a requirement necessarily, but it might be nice if the commercial lot number 3 were to the east of commercial lot number 2, just to free up space behind Public Works in case there were ever need for expansion. I could see greater value in that case. But again, I don't know what the topography allows. But in terms of, what's the ideal, where would I see the most value to the city in taking out Lot A as a park or just city land for future use? I think it's a little bit more valuable to the city if it's more contiguous to the Public Works parcel.
Oh, sure. I see what you're saying. Well, I think for probably the near future, it's going to be farmland. So, and we all like farmland, so that works too.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask staff, is there a similar restriction on road access of 10 versus 19 from a county aspect? So there's really isn't an option to put an additional road in.
Midway through.
Yeah, like to the west of the creek there between that and the western property.
No, unless they're able to work out a deal with D&D to have a shared access from the north
Oh, yeah,
through the D&D property, but
they probably wouldn't want that to be a street through their own existing
Yep.
property. Okay, I just didn't,
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Nate.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Bye.
All right. Going on to 9, unfinished business. We have a public comment opportunity if there's anyone.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. If anyone's joining us, we did not receive any in-person comments, but if anyone's joining us virtually, you can press *9 or click reactions and click raise your hand. Mayor, at this time, no one is raising their hand.
Perfect. We'll just go right into 9A.
Sounds good, and actually Maggie's going to be joining us virtually to present this item.
Okay. Hello, Mayor and Council.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect. So tonight I am presenting to you an updated draft of the 2022 budget. Since last presented, staff has continued to refine the budget. With the compensation study approved on the October 28th council meeting, wages will be increased by $66,000. Insurance premium have came in lower and will lower the budget by $44,000. The net effect on wages would be an increase of $22,000. With the transitioning to BSNA software, staff is proposing an amended general ledger structure and this more refined description to follow more in line with the Minnesota Uniform Chart of Account recommendation. Another change to general fund budget is the removal of building surcharges, which will be removed from both the revenue and the expenditure and therefore have a net zero effect due to this being passed through a liability account instead. Staff is also recommending further breakout of the budget to increase transparency and better track expenditure. This includes separating the supplies from the contracted work and creations of 4 new departments within the general ledger. The department would be the Emergency Management Department, which is removing a line item from the Police Department, which is the utility line item. We will also be pulling some line items from Public Works and creating a paved and unpaved street department. That would be 2 separate departments. And then we would be pulling recreation line item from the Parks Department and creating a recreation department within the general ledger. Additionally, staff is recommending that the water and sewer fund cover a portion of the Public Works expenditure. Those are asterisks in the attached budget document. That would equal approximately $40,000 between the 2 funds. The last change that staff is recommending is not shown today in today's current draft of the general fund budget is the reallocation of staff time to building inspection department based on fee analysis done by ABDO. There will be no effect on the budget for this change since it's just reallocating wages between the departments. Next slide. So on the left is the 2022 revenue by source. It says category, but it's actually by source. And then on the right-hand side is the 2022 expenditures by category. So there are 3 options shown on the table. Staff is requesting feedback for the final budget, which will be presented on the December 9th meeting, and staff will need further directions on what to do or what step to take with the tax levy. With the refinement of the budget, that creates an additional $58,000. Option 1 would be to reduce the levy by the full additional amount. So that's $58,834. Option 2 would be to keep the levy the same as what we presented at preliminary. And option 3 would be to split the levy 50-50 with a specified fund. And staff is recommending that 50-50 be split with the asphalt fund. So with that, staff would like further directions from the council.
Perfect. Thank you. So where are we on this with the 50-50 split would get us at a tax rate of 43.099?
Can I make a motion?
Yeah?
Yes.
We approve and use the recommendation of splitting the additional funds between the tax levy and the asphalt fund. And for the public listening, this is like a
Million.
our sixth meeting on this, so it's not as if we're looking at the budget for the first time. We've talked about it. This is what our expectations were to keep the tax rate the same or lower, and we've done that. This is just the last
Home stretch.
pencil sharpened, all that, to finish in the budget for next year.
Yep. I'll second that.
I have one point of discussion.
Go right ahead.
I like all of this. I have one other idea. We have that stormwater project that we kicked around for the area by Rolling Hills Road. Might this be used for that? Is there some fund for stormwater that we might want to set this aside for instead of asphalt, since there's a specific project we have in mind?
Well, that's what we're looking at creating with the.
Yeah, Mayor
stormwater.
Council, we have a stormwater fund, certainly. Asphalt is certainly in dire need of funds. That was a recommendation there. That being said, they both are in dire needs of funds, so I think as long as they go into public infrastructure, I don't know if Kevin really cares. I do think you'll have another bite at the apple in April, before you finalize the audit for 2021. We are projecting a decent surplus. So that's another opportunity you would have to allocate funds to that fund. So I think so one, half dozen the other, we'll take it, stormwater, asphalt. We need it, and those buckets are not nearly as full as they need to be.
Okay. For me. Okay. Anything else on it?
So can you just elaborate specifically why the asphalt fund for the audience?
We have these things called gravel road.
I mean, 29,000 is not gonna go very far in paving a gravel road.
Every bit counts. This year, the council made some significant investments towards improving street infrastructure with Corcoran Trail, as well as Appaloosa Woods, and as well as the Dayton Parkway interchange, and then upcoming City Center Drive, and there's just a lot of needs. So either way, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's important. We will start having funds come back beginning next year as assessment revenue comes in based upon those projects. It'll take a little while to build up. I know Kevin's team is working on a feasibility study for Park Trail Road paving, that petition that came in. Right now, we're drained down to basically zero in asphalt until we get some of those assessment revenues back. So it's just where I thought maybe the most immediate needs could take place. Similarly, in early next year, you'll talk about issuing debt for the 2022-23 capital improvement plan. That's another opportunity to have a discussion. Do you want to levy money and knock out a couple of these stormwater projects, and then just use tax dollars to pay back that debt service over time, so you can kind of knock out a couple projects? There's any number of ways you can finance these projects. So that's a long-ranging answer, but we just felt asphalt makes sense.
Yeah, okay. It'll be used.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
9B, water and sewer budget. Also Maggie?
Okay, so I'll be presenting this one as well. Per the financial management plan, there is an estimate of 238 new homes scheduled for 2022. The amount of the new home has the biggest impact on the water trunk revenue, which is an increase of $529,000 from 2021. Staff is recommending removal of the SAC fee from revenue and expenditure, which follows in line with what we're doing with the surcharge in the general fund budget. This will have a net zero effect on the budget and will go into a liability account as well. Depreciation expense of approximately $250,000 will be added to both the water and the sewer fund for the expenditure budget. We should have been budgeting this, so that's just an additional item that we should be budgeting for regularly. As mentioned in the general fund budget portion, each enterprise fund will reimburse the general fund for a portion of the public works expenditure. So that's $20,620 each, which equals the approximately $40,000. That's put into the general fund as a revenue operating transfer in then. Finally, staff is recommending the shown GL changes and description on the draft as the city moves to BSNA software. And then on the next slide are the summary of the budget for 2022 water and sewer, with both funds expected to come out as positive at year end for 2022. So staff is asking the council for further directions or to approve moving forward with the proposed budget.
All right. Anything stand out?
Can I make a motion to approve?
Yep.
Just Mayor and Council, this is just giving us direction to proceed. We actually would bring forward formal budgets at the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Just so you know. You can use a motion, but really direction is
Otherwise,
fine.
we're all good.
Mr.
Proceed
Mayor?
as is.
One
All right.
question, so the depreciation, are we setting aside funds for future repair projects with that budget allocation, or how is that affecting our cash reserve? Are we setting aside those funds somehow?
So depreciation is stuff we spent already, and it's depreciating the asset that we have not spent yet, but we bought already. So we already spent the money. We're just now capturing it in the income statement.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll go on to new business. Another public comment opportunity on the off chance.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. If anyone, we don't have any audience here, if anyone is joining us virtually and like to speak, you can press *9 or raise your hand. And Mayor, at this time, no one is doing so.
We'll go on to 10A.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. This is really a cleanup item with resolutions to amend and create job descriptions as we've been talking about throughout the year with the budget. So we have establishment of a new part-time program coordinator position, establishing a new recreation supervisor position and appointing Jessica Christensen-Buck to that position, establishing a part-time administrative assistant planning position, and also amending the planner job description to just include that they supervise that position, and appointing Amy Fadden to the full-time position in the police department. So happy to take any questions. This has been part of the staffing plan, as noted in the report. This does not include the public works portions we've talked about as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, all stuff we've seen before. Anything?
Do we need to make a motion?
Yep.
It's a resolution, so this is what we do.
I'll make a motion to approve as suggested.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
10B, training opportunity, FBI National Academy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was recently notified of my invitation to an upcoming session of the FBI National Academy from April to June of 2022. So this training opportunity typically has a waiting list of several years. I was on it previously in my previous job and then re-entered it in 2019. So what is the National Academy? It's an immersive graduate level residential training program that the FBI puts on for local law enforcement leaders from around the world. And it's really designed to, you think of it more as every day and night is focused on the profession and development, both personal and professional, and focuses on what leaders can bring back to their communities, learning from both the instructors and the other law enforcement leaders that they gather there. Again, it is designed for local law enforcement leaders to bring back to their communities. I guess as far as how expenses would be looking with it, the academy covers the cost of tuition, lodging, some transportation, and the weekday meals. And typically the sponsoring agencies are responsible for that employee's wages, benefits, meal, and travel costs. So that's why there's such a stringent selection process, to make sure that they're making, I guess, the correct investments in the right people and at the right times, but also to manage the diversity of their class from both large agencies, small agencies, and from a rural, suburban, and global perspective.
Can it be that stringent if you got in, be honest with us?
Well, they made me wait a long time for it.
Background check.
So as far as expenses to the city, it would be, obviously, as I said, if I were approved, my wages, benefits, and then some collateral meals and travel costs. So I'd plan to drive the city squad car there. Typically, cities will cover one round-trip flight home during the 10-week academy, and then per diems to cover meals on the weekends and some uniforms and clothing that would be purchased there. So some of those training expenses would be offset because I wouldn't be attending the state conference, but there would probably be a net cost to the city of, between that $1,000 to $1,500. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Matt?
I have a question. As a part of regular employment here, do we have a tuition assistance program, period, for any employee who
Yes.
wants it?
Yes, it does need to be approved by council, but.
Yeah. So this is similar in the philosophy of paying for somebody's, to better their, I guess, skill set. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it borders that line between in-service and the educational. I think it fits kind of squarely in both of those categories.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great opportunity. And it sounds like you have everything, or we have a plan for the time you'd be gone. That was the thing that jumped out to me, is making sure we did, which I know is something we'd take into consideration, but other than that, I don't have any concerns with it.
Can we get a video of you doing the yellow brick road thing?
Yes, I would be willing to bet there'd be some videos and pictures of that.
Don't know what that is, but I want to know.
Well, I've read the link for the FBI training, and they put them through rigorous physical activities.
Nice.
Oh. Yeah, that'd be cool. Can't wait.
Yeah, typically they have them, they do PT in the morning, class all day, and then you're usually doing papers and research stuff at night. And then they occupy the other weekends and free time with educational tours. Culminating at the end of it is, for those that are choose to participate, is the yellow brick road, so.
You can fight Zeke when you get home.
Fine.
So, and to your point, yeah, we've had discussions internally on how we manage that, and speaking with Lieutenant Burns, and also the sergeants being able to help with some of that bandwidth would be a key part to making this function well. I would still obviously be, working for the city and taking calls, but it would have to be during off hours and making sure that still engaged to whatever degree possible here, so.
Gotcha.
Thanks, man.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make the motion to authorize the Director of Public Safety to attend the FBI National Academy in 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
10C. Back to Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know you've heard this before when we've talked about staffing in the police department, but we've always historically kept a pretty thin margin for full-time staff. And we were able to accomplish that because of, our officers are pretty flexible, but we've also had a good number of part-time officers that help backfill for when those full-time officers are off for either PTO or for training. And those part-timers have always typically stepped up. Well, what we're seeing lately, as many of you have heard in the news, that there's a staffing shortage in law enforcement. We're also seeing a significant drop in the number of people that are willing to take on part-time work in law enforcement, based on risk, based on training requirements, and a whole host of other reasons. So because of that, we've seen a decline in the number of part-time officers, but at the same time, seen the training demands and the workload on our existing officers has stayed the same. In addition to that, we've begun seeing more and more long-term leave scenarios from police officers. So when we compound the people transitioning out of the profession and long-term leave scenarios, it's left us perpetually short-staffed. So when we look at the past 36 months, and I kind of put a color-coded chart in there, this is showing the number of officers that we've been down during any given month. Over the past 36 months, we've been full-staffed for 4 of those. It's not for lack of trying, but there are certain times when an officer's out on leave, we can't backfill their position for obviously the hope that they're coming back to work. But knowing that we are seeing perpetual staffing shortages, What I'm asking the council to consider is considering hiring an additional full-time police officer, not out of, our hope is that things get better in the future, that we don't have the long-term absences, that the economy or the job market starts turning around. And for that reason, my proposal is looking forward. In 2023, we were planning to look to add 2 police officers. What I'm proposing here is adding one of those 2023 officers now, which the majority of that being 2022. But that does carry that somewhat commitment from the part of the city to carry forward with that in '23, assuming that those scenarios take place. As far as paying for that, because of the officers that have been out on leave this year, there is a budget surplus as it relates to officer wages, and we would propose that we do a one-time budget transfer from this year's budget surplus to next year's budget to carry that cost through 2022, and then obviously it would hit the tax rolls in 2023. So really what we're looking to do is try and get caught up, or at least closer to our traditional staffing. The reason for asking for the permanent addition is that, as you can see right now, we're down 2. I don't anticipate that changing in the coming months, but if we get those officers back or those positions are vacated, we would like to proceed with rehiring for those positions. So trying to offer that context, and we've had discussions at length, and I don't know if you have anything to add on the topic, Brad, but otherwise I'd be happy to take any questions after that.
No, I think that's a good tee up on the discussion, just as far as from a financial standpoint. We had a little conversation after you and I met, and essentially how it would work financially is that we would just really go over budget in 2022 and just dip into the surplus that would exist from the previous years. So we wouldn't make a formal transfer per se, it just would be, that's how that would function. So I think the data speaks for itself. We need help extremely bad, and Matt and his team has done as much as they can. They've had people decline vacations, required overtime. We have been draining a crew that's really drained, so we need the help.
Do we have the equipment, squad cars and so on for the additional person?
Yeah, we've actually made those, the necessary adjustments to support that in this planned, this upcoming CIP. So with the vehicle pre-approvals, included 1 fleet addition that will be able to support the staffing for that position. So that's a great question.
Very good.
So it's essentially just moving one of those hires up 8 months, 10 months?
Well, it would be,
somewhere in there,
it
depending
was
on-
going to be proposed for 2023, and
Right.
we're asking for immediate approval, so looking to start the process now in '21. The real budget hit is going to be the end of, if they're able to start this year, and then obviously for the full calendar year of 2022.
Yeah. That's just faster than I thought it would.
Yeah, I'd say that's a dream over
It's
there.
optimistic.
But hey,
It's optimistic.
good goal to have. Any other questions on it?
Yeah, is 1 enough? And is there enough budget surplus that if we decide halfway through 2022, we want to open another position, would there be enough surplus to support that?
So the surplus question I'll let Brad address. As far as is 1 enough, I think it's a step in the right direction. Ideally, we would, we'd be asking for 2, but, we're always sensitive to making sure we don't overextend, especially as it comes to full-time staffing, recognizing that is an expense we take very seriously, and also we don't want to be in a position where, I think, we've had this conversation with some of you that if development turned off today, the number of homes and work that we've added more than supports the need for those 2 additional officers, but trying to be sensitive to the economic climate and how things are going to go. I'm just real cautious about trying to ask for too much early, and I think if we add, I think the hope would be add 1, see if this gets us close enough to survive, and at that point, hope the market turns around, hope that there's changes in a positive direction. And if that doesn't happen, you could see me asking the same question again halfway through next year.
No, I would just add, the only thing that would maybe differ is if for some reason we're fortunate enough to get just 2 absolute rock star candidates, because it's been so hard. That would be a reason to say, you know what, we struck gold here. I know there's a budget impact, but we should take these 2 while they're available. That would be the only other potential change, I would say.
And we'd be able to adjust that on the fly if that scenario happened?
Yeah.
Good deal.
And then one other question I had, I can't remember what it was, a year or two ago, we applied for a grant to cover some of the costs of new hires. Did we ever get approved for that?
So we applied for the COPS grant, and we were notified that we were not recipients of the grant.
So are we, because it was just in the news a couple days ago about St. Paul getting, I think it was like 50 officers or something like that. I don't remember if that was the FBI or no, it was the Department of Homeland Security or something, I can't remember, but are we actively applying for all these grants when they come forward?
Yeah, so I get notified, usually it's through IACP or through DOJ directly, what grants we might be eligible for. A lot of and each round is a little bit different, so we evaluate how that fits with our community and the needs. So one of the last, so we applied for the COPS grant, as you guys are aware, and then they had second rounds of grants come through that were focused on community intervention, specifically focusing on juveniles and school resource officers. When we don't have a school, it doesn't mean we're not going to try and make the pitch, but when you look at it, we evaluate the man hours that go into completing one of the applications and what our probability of success is. So yes, it is something we're constantly monitoring, and we're going to try every time we can, but we haven't been successful at this point.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to keep an open mind with that second position to alleviate, employee fatigue and burnout. We don't want to be in a situation where we're
Losing another one.
losing another one.
I'd say if we, if we feel confident and, like Brad said, if we get 2 rock star applicants, bring it to us, for sure.
Yeah, and I guess I would seek direction from you is that something that you want us to look for in the process and play it by the candidate pool? That if there are 2 to hire them, or is that something that you guys would rather step into, one now and one evaluate halfway through next year?
I don't want to compromise quality.
Right.
That's the key, because what you've built is special because of who you've hired. And if you don't feel like you've got the right talent pool, I don't want you to stretch for it, personally. I'd be open to 2 if they're really good, but I wouldn't want you to lower your standards to get to 2.
I'd say let's go with the 1, and if things change on the fly, we just bring it to us, and we'll have to.
Yeah.
Likewise to your comment too, but when you've got the right people in the door, sometimes it's worth to take the chance versus the next time around, you don't get as good a selection pool.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the recognition that the hiring market has changed dramatically, across the board, but in law enforcement specifically, getting quality candidates in the door is a challenge for every agency. Obviously, I think our community is one of the best ones in the state to work for, but I'm a little biased on that regard. So if we can get them, we're going to try, and if that opportunity comes up, I'll certainly let you know and come back. Thank you.
Sounds good. Perfect. Do we need a motion on that?
I think it'd be wise with
Yes.
this one.
Yep.
All right, I'll go ahead and make the motion to authorize staff to add 1 full-time permanent officer position in 2022 and begin the police officer hiring process.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10D, scheduling work session, water supply planning, December 9th, our next meeting.
I put it on my calendar already.
Perfect. That issue for anyone? All right, we'll go ahead and schedule the work session for December 9th at 5:30. We almost made it through. Staff reports? Do we have anything?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, just an update on our city park master plan. We're gonna take a year, or a couple months, I should say, in first and second quarter and get some community feedback and update some plans potentially, since we're pushing our project back a year. So just thought we'd bring that back to your attention, let you know what we're planning on doing.
Sounds good.
And you're looking for additional feedback from the community? That's what you're doing?
Yeah, correct. It's been a couple of years at this point. We're, adding, 240 whatever homes a year. You're adding a lot of new people every year too. So I think it's wise to go back to the community and just ask a few more questions. We do a combination with both virtual and in person.
Okay.
Then, let's see here. City council schedule. Have a bigger break than we had the last couple weeks. I'm sure plenty coming up. All right, and other than that, wanted to say this is our last meeting with our city administrator, Brad, and wanted to thank him for 8+ years of work to the city, and we appreciate all you've done, and wish you best of luck
Thank
on your new endeavor. And I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I have about a 20-minute speech I'd like to make.
Let's call a bathroom break.
No, just a really quick note, and I forget things if I don't write it down. And as much as I told Jessica it was going to end at 11:04, and I could maybe adjourn right now and win the bet, but instead I'll take a minute. But I just want to thank you, all of you, and those before you for giving me the opportunity to serve in this role. As the mayor said, it's been a little over 8.5 years of a very significant transition through Corcoran, and I've worked alongside 18 council members, including 3 mayors, so it's been a heck of a transition from a leadership style too. And dozens of commissioners as well. And I want to say on behalf of the community, thank you to you for the time and energy it takes to be here after 11 o'clock at night and slug through hundreds of pages of items for the $300 a month you guys get. So it means a great deal. Back in 2013, we did not have a single property on city water and sewer. And I was the staff liaison to all the commissions and every single department head besides the police. So that's how things have changed just in my 8.5 years here. And I'm proud to say that the city is in an incredibly successful position, and the community should be proud of the organization that works for them, and especially this team, the staff here. I've seen them work through incredibly challenging situations as the city grows at an exponential rate. The talent bench is deep, and the city's fortunate to have the team it does. And it's not just at this level, it's everyone who works for these individuals too, that you don't get to see on a regular basis. From taking a permit question to responding to a call to cleaning a culvert. I mean, the team is just exceptional from top to bottom. So I just want to, take a note to talk about them too. And helping to build that team has been by far my biggest accomplishment that I'm the most proud of here. And it's because of you allowing me to have the opportunity to create the team. So I appreciate that. So that's all I have. It is my last council meeting here, and at probably 50 public meetings a year for 8+. It's probably close to 500 meetings that I've been a part of over my 8.5 years here, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Good job, Brad.
Your recordings will live on forever on YouTube.
They will now. We didn't record meetings when I got here either.
There you go. All right, anything else before we adjourn?
No.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.